Hello everyone, this is Philip Martin, this is OnFilm on Video, and this is Inside Baseball Week here at the old OnFilm studio. I had something ready to go, and because we were scrambling this week, and let me just set this up, that there's really nothing opening really wide in Arkansas. At Riverdale, they're opening David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future, which is a really interesting film. It just opened at Cannes last week. People walked out. People, have very, very strong ideas about this film. It's a very polarizing film, and for whatever reason, we weren't able to screen it, to review it. They didn't have screenings in Philadelphia or Kansas City, much less Arkansas. They weren't providing screeners for it, even though we did ask. We tried to get a hold of this. I have an especial interest in David Cronenberg films. I've written a lot about them. I once wrote that he was our best working director, or at least our most interesting working director, and I think that in the early 2000s that was probably true. I think that he's an amazing artist, and anything he says is likely worth paying attention to, though if you synopsize this movie and you read what it's about, it sounds pretty bad. I mean, it just does not sound... But that's not fair, because you can't tell a movie by how you synopsize it. I mean, it just doesn't, that just doesn't translate. But, I can see there's some gory bits of body horror in it that are typical of Cronenberg, and I think that some people are upset by that and distressed by that sort of thing, and I get that. Okay. But anyway, my point is that we didn't really have a lead review for this week. So I wrote something about it, and that's what we went with for our lead review. And then, wonderful, and we don't use wire services very often. If you've noticed our product, we don't typically lean on the AP wire or pieces from other newspapers. One of the reasons is because we are looking to present you with a consistent critical voice, and we want you to know the critics that you're reading every week, and we want you to, have some sort of a parasocial relationship with those critics. To be honest, that's the strategy. So it doesn't do us very much good to run in a lot of, random, critical voices here and there that sort of interrupts the dialogue that we're having. So we try as much as possible to, have one of our guys review it. One of our guys and girl review it. Two girls, actually. It's not always the case, but this was no big deal here because nobody reviewed Crimes of the Future. I mean, I saw some reviews online. Those were not available for us to use for whatever reason. It's harder and harder to find reviews online, too, which is a interesting behind-the-scenes thing if you pay attention to newspaper culture. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I know that most newspapers don't do movie reviews anymore. Therefore, there's less movie reviews that go out on the wire services. I don't know why we don't put our reviews on the wire service. I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure there's a reason that other newspapers don't put theirs on the wire service. But, the fact is we don't. There's not a whole lot out there. We could not get you a review of Crimes of the Future, even though I was very interested in the movie, and we've sort of expressed that interest way back. That is always the prerogative of a distributor. I'm going to take a break. We'll be right back. Well, I'm back. I had some urgent newspaper business I had to attend to. That's just the way it is sometimes. I had to actually clarify something, send some photos to somebody. It's been that kind of week. It's been that kind of 2.5 years. Yeah. Well, anyway. Where was I? I was talking about David Cronenberg. Okay, Cronenberg is 79 years old. He hasn't made a film in 8 years. The last pure science fiction film he made was in 1999, which coincidentally was the last film of his that I didn't really like very much, Existence. And I can't to this day tell you what it was about. Jude Law, Jennifer Jason Leigh were in it. There was body horror. There was, But I'm a big Cronenberg fan, and I think that this movie deserves a chance. So therefore, I'm selling you that. Plus, there's not much competition. There just isn't. There's just nothing else that's opening this week. So, talked about that. Piers Marchant came in, stepped up to the plate, and delivered a really nice essay on Tom Cruise as the last movie star, which happened to be exactly what I was planning to talk about in this here video. Now, I necessarily read Piers's piece because I edited it, and I sent it in there, so it's going to be really hard for me to talk about what I was going to talk about without referring to it. So I've got it right here in front of me, so I'm going to refer to Piers's piece perhaps when I talk. But, I was thinking about this. It's been 20 years since I spent any time with Tom Cruise. And I didn't spend much time with Tom Cruise. What happened was, this was during the Minority Report press tour, and I went to Dallas for it. This was not a Los Angeles or New York trip. They were taking it all around the country, so it was kind of an intimate thing. There weren't many people there at this press event, maybe 5, 6, no more than 8 of us. And we spent a lot of time relative to how these things normally go, we spent a lot of time with the people that we interviewed. And I don't really remember anyone that we interviewed. I think we did interview Steven Spielberg, who was on a TV set, I've talked to him on a TV set several times, and it seems to be the natural way to talk to Steven Spielberg. He's on a satellite feed somewhere. But Tom Cruise was actually there, and he was actually in the room, and we spent, a good 30 minutes with him. I mean, in a small group. And he was very engaging. He was electric. He was wired. He was exactly what you would expect Tom Cruise to be like. And I suspect that's because that's exactly what Tom Cruise is like. I think he goes home in the evenings and is Tom Cruise. I believe him when he says he doesn't take days off. I mean, a lot of us don't take days off. I don't really take days off either. I know a lot of people who are kind of like that, especially if they're involved in some sort of creative enterprise. You're always thinking at least about what you're going to do. I didn't get the sense I would ever be friends with someone like Tom Cruise, but I didn't dislike him. I actually was amused, or more properly maybe bemused by him. He was bouncing all around the room. He was running up to everybody, and he was making like these incisive little observations about whoever he was talking to and whoever he was making eye contact with at the moment. And I remember that there was a woman I know that a critic I know who had some work done on her teeth, and it hadn't quite, I mean, you could tell she had work done on her teeth, but Tom Cruise couldn't. Tom Cruise gets right up in her face and just looks at her and goes, "My, you've got a great smile." And she did have a great smile, don't get me wrong, but it's just not the sort of thing that you would say to someone who's just had some, dental work done, and you can tell they've had dental work done. You're sort of like, it'll settle in, But he was just, he was a ball of energy, and he was a real force, and you couldn't take your eyes off of him. And the one person he reminded me most of in the world was Bill Clinton. It was the same sort of eye magnet that you just are pulled to this guy. And it may be fascination or horror or, something like empathy, but you still cannot take your eyes off of him. And that's when he's in a room. Now, when he's when he's on screen, the effect is magnified. I think everybody on screen comes across a little differently than they do. And the camera loves some people, and it dislikes some people. You know, I mean, if you're like me and you've got a relatively small head compared to this, you kind of look funny on camera. Maybe I don't think I look funny, but I mean, you don't look exactly perfect. Tom Cruise has got this big, enormous head, okay? And this head's right here. This would be his head. And the proportions are all different. And for some reason, the camera has always liked small people with big heads. Charlie Chaplin is sort of the pattern that you kind of look for. It's like, you know, it's sort of a running joke. I mean, I'm a legitimate 6'2", and at times I have been a bigger person I am now. I mean, I'm sort of like, you know, now I don't do anything but, you know, cardio. But back in the day when I used to lift weights and stuff, I was a legitimately big guy. And, you know, I met Forrest Whitaker, and I remember hearing about Forrest Whitaker being this huge person. Forrest Whitaker comes up to here on me. Forrest Whitaker's shoulders are no wider than mine, you know. He's not a big person, yet he can appear to be a towering presence on screen. He can be a very physically imposing presence on screen. Tom Cruise can be a very physically imposing person on screen. One reason he's very, very fit. He's in good shape. He's got this compact build that, if you see it in a vacuum, you know, translates to like a fairly burly guy, I guess. I mean, and famously, I mean, I've heard about, you know, them building the doorways, you know, slightly smaller, shorter doorways, so Tom Cruise looks bigger. I've heard all the stories, and there was a few years ago, they had an exhibit down here at the old State House. It was about film in Arkansas, and they had an exhibit from The Firm, the Tom Cruise movie, John Grisham movie that Tom Cruise starred in, that was filmed mostly in Memphis, but a little bit in Arkansas. And they had the suit that Tom Cruise wore in The Firm. And it was on a mannequin, one of those headless mannequins. And I don't remember exactly who, but one of the curators. Now, maybe not even one of the curators. Maybe it was just somebody who had been around the exhibit a lot. Told me to go look at the feet of the mannequin. And there were lifts on this mannequin. I mean, really, it was sort of like, you know, the suit would have dragged the ground, you know, if it had been a flat kind of shoe sort of arrangement. But, you know, so, you know, but who cares? Tom Cruise is a really good actor. He's a very strange man. That Pierce points that out in his. It's a very strange man, but he's capable of delivering really good performances. He's a really good either natural actor or someone who's worked really hard at his craft. I remember thinking, you know, early in his career that, you know, there's more to this kid than just, you know, the risky business, dancing in his underwear sort of stuff. I mean, he's got, and you know, Born on the 4th of July. That's early Tom Cruise, if you think about it. That may be his best performance to date. Collateral is a great performance. He consistently delivers good performances. Now, he's not consistently in great movies, but his movies are of such a quality because he cares about them. And I admire that. And there's plenty of things I don't admire about Tom Cruise. All this Scientology stuff, whoa, that's freaky. And that's something I have a hard time wrapping my head around that I can even, enjoy this guy. I didn't think he made a good Jack Reacher, but that's just because I had this vision of Jack Reacher in my head, I don't think... let me say this. How do I say this? I don't think he is a tremendously interior actor. I think it's basically reactive, it's intuitive, and it's him play. It's in a way, it's sort of like the Billy Bob Thornton school of acting. He's always playing himself, but he's playing himself in these situations, and that makes it feel authentic. Now, I don't think he's as good as Billy Bob as an actor. I mean, I just think there's a quality to Billy Bob's work that's, I don't know, it's almost preternaturally natural. I mean, he just becomes whoever he is. And this is always Tom Cruise as. But he's using the same technique, I think. I mean, I think he's putting himself in the role of the character. And if you watch War of the Worlds, that's a pretty good performance, too. I mean, I'm not fond of the movie that much. I mean, it's just sort of like I don't care about the movie. But, he's a scared dad in that movie. He's not the action hero. There's not a lot of vanity in a lot of Tom Cruise's work. Now, in some of them, I mean, it's sort of like the original Top Gun. Yeah. But that's the point of that movie. That's sort of... I mean, if you're talking about making a movie that's got all kinds of, contextual cookies to explore, Top Gun's a great one. And the new one, which is basically the same movie structurally. They're fine. I mean, but he's making entertainments. He's not worried about making art, though he's perfectly capable of making art. And there's a reason that Stanley Kubrick picked him out to be in Eyes Wide Shut, him and Nicole Kidman. That was a really good casting choice. And I can say that as somebody who years ago wasn't thrilled with that movie. Now I respect it a whole lot more. So anyway, so I really didn't read much of Piers's piece to you. You can read that in our newspaper. But I gave you my little thoughts on Tom Cruise. And who's going to, outlive us all, and eventually he will rule the world. The one thing that I will say is that don't let me near your kids, because I have actually given this advice to high school and college kids. If you want to be a movie star, and I'm not saying that you will be a movie star or that it's even possible to be a movie star, or that there will be another movie star after Tom Cruise, because it's a different media landscape. Lots of stuff is different. I think you have to go about this a whole different way now to have a successful career in movies, and that maybe movie stardom is precluded by the way that we do things now, which is not an entirely bad thing. But if you insist on being a movie star, if that's what you have to be, quit school as soon as you can, go to Los Angeles, go try to break in, go wait tables, go do whatever else, be 16 years old running around there, trying to get seen, trying to get known, because that's what works when it works, which is very, very rare. Very, very rare. It hardly ever works, but that's the only way. I think it works more than going to Northwestern and taking theater classes. That's a great way to have a career. If you want a career doing, Broadway shows, or acting in summer stock, or even, maybe having a middling, television career. But if you want to be the big dog, you've got to go all in early. He did. It worked. Millions maybe tried it. Didn't work. So, But there has to be a Tom Cruise. I mean, if we didn't have Tom Cruise, we would invent him. And some people, I think, are not sure that we didn't, and that he's not some animatronic, creature. I enjoy his movies. I enjoy his work. He's an odd guy. But even Richard Nixon had soul, so, let's just leave it like that. No shade on Tom Cruise from here, okay? He works hard, produces good stuff. You got to like that. You got to want him on your team. Till next week, that's it. And we might have news coming soon. Teaser.